I appreciate you for inviting me to participate in this, and thank you for all of you for being here today. Sam, this is a great thing that we have going on here that you started over there in New Zealand. I'm just proud to be a part of something like this. This is my first time being a part of something like this. I feel like it's a great blessing that we have the technology in our day and age to be able to have a conversation like this so far apart from one another. That's a beautiful thing. I just look forward to us having a great conversation today. So any and all questions you may have for me, please ask them at any point during this conversation, because that's what it is, an informal conversation where we can talk about some of the issues and challenges that we're facing in our environments, our communities, in our world, and talk about possible solutions to some of those problems. And I think that's the first step, is always to try and create meaningful dialogue. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but first let's go through background. So I live in the United States, in the state of Georgia, which houses Atlanta. A lot of you may be familiar with the city of Atlanta. So Henry County, where I work and live, is basically a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, the city, which is the capital city of Georgia. I grew up here, and I went to college at the University of Georgia, where I studied education, actually, and then went to law school. And so I'm a prosecutor in the United States. And what that means is that if someone breaks the law, it's my job to hold them accountable in the court system. So that means if somebody breaks into your house and takes your things, or break into a car, or commits a violent crime, then my job is to make sure that that person is held responsible. Now, a lot of times people think of, especially in the United States, that when people commit crimes, that the majority of the punishment is going to be incarceration, jail, or prison. And a lot of times that is the case. However, we understand that, or at least many of us understand, that jail and prison is not the only solution to trying to make sure that we have a safe community. And so to try and make things equal and balanced, we created a program that seeks to do those things. I've been in office now 3.5 years. This is my first term. A term in office for me is 4 years. And today, like Quill said, is election day. And I was fortunate enough not to draw an opponent in this election. So I'll be in office for the next 4 years, starting in January. I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta. My parents did not have, they didn't go to college. They didn't have higher education. I'm an African-American, obviously, in the southern part of the United States. And so I'm in a minority group in the United States. So African-Americans in the United States are about 13% of the population. However, people of African-American descent are overrepresented in the prison population in this country and in the state that I live in, which is unfortunate. And so a lot of that is due to historical things that have happened, systemic institutions that have created disparities in the justice system. But we see those disparities not just in the criminal justice system. We see those disparities in housing. We see those disparities in economics. We see those disparities in healthcare. We see that in employment. And so we're just trying to do our part in our office as it relates to criminal justice to make sure that everybody's treated fairly, that people are given second chances, and that we're not destroying people's lives.
I kind of just wanted to jump in, and you talked about the importance of creating dialogue and these, conversations about these sensitive issues. And as a young person, it's we may not have the networks and the large reach to create these conversations. So often it's our families and it's our parents that we start our conversations with. So my question is, how do we have these safe conversations with our families, especially for me with my parents who have kind of the conservative traditional mindset? Yeah, if that makes sense.
Right. So it's hard, especially when you're dealing with people, a power dynamic like that, like whether it's a parent or an older person, a person in authority. But I would say first and foremost, you got to start with where you are. And I would say, I can't emphasize enough, you got to start with each other. Young people in your peer group, like I say, who are like-minded. I think the thing that promotes change the most is when young people get together and share their ideas and treat each other great, and don't, because a lot of young people, first of all, racism is prejudice, bias. It's a taught phenomenon. It's not something that we are born with. It's something that we've learned from somewhere. But the cool thing is that we have the benefit of history to learn from. And what I've learned is that you're not going to be friends with everybody, but we can't be afraid to try to go and meet and understand and talk to somebody who may be different from us. And sometimes you may have to be affirmative in trying to do that. And sometimes we make friends because it's kind of who we come into contact with. Sometimes it takes us to take the initiative to try and find people from different cultural backgrounds, somebody outside of your cultural realm, just to start a conversation, just like this one. One of the main things is you don't want to feel like you gotta, knock the wall down all at one time, especially if you're still developing in your education and career. Nobody's expecting you to do that. But a lot of times I just ask questions just to see if I understand where the other person is coming from, and try and figure out what the root of that position they have is. Sometimes it's rooted in a bad experience that they may have with one person or a group of people over a period of time, a long time ago. And it helps all of us to know and understand that. Even if we feel like they're completely off base, it's important for us to know where they're coming from. And once we understand where they're coming from, then that helps us a lot in terms of which way our dialogue should go, so that we can pose countervailing views, etc. Because what we know as minorities is that sometimes people aren't listening to where we're coming from. They're not listening to our stories. They're not listening. They're not appreciating our viewpoint. So sometimes we have to, like, I always remind myself that I have to listen to other people too, even if they don't know my experience, because they don't know my experience, and they're more likely to listen to me if I show that I'm listening to them.
Got a question, if that's all right.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Cool. Hi, Darius. Thanks
Hello.
for
How you doing?
chatting with us today.
Of course.
So, if you can't tell from my accent, I come from an American background as well, but coming and living here and comparing and seeing everything that's happening back in the States, it's made me think a lot about how much of what's happening is blatant racism versus unconscious bias that, hasn't really been addressed. And I just wanted to know what your opinion was on, like, if unconscious bias or even conscious bias is part of the issue. How do you talk about that? Because it's a lot harder to, say like you're being racist if you're doing so without meaning to, if that
That's
makes
right.
any sense.
It does, because I've never met a person who's an admitted racist. Like, you don't see that. Like, I mean, I've lived a long time, and I've never heard somebody who's done a racist act admit that I did it in the name of racism. I would submit that most racism is unconscious, bias, manifested. So racism is basically when you just think your race is better than another, and prejudice is where you prejudge a person before you get to know them. And I think all of that is subconscious, because it's taught to us in a unconscious, subconscious way. It's subliminally taught to us, because we all come from a different tribe, right? That's just natural human existence. I have a tribe, you have a tribe, she has a tribe, he has a tribe, and all of that's okay. Nobody's saying you can't be individuals. Nobody can't say you can't be proud of your culture and celebrate it. All we're saying is that everybody should be celebrated and tolerated and loved the same, despite the fact that we're all different. But what happens along the way is one tribe starts feeling like, I'm going to demonize the other tribes and pretend like my tribe is perfect, when both of those are wrong. And that's what come into problems. And a lot of that is taught to young people, not overtly, sometimes overtly, but sometimes subliminally. And so most people who are racist or prejudiced or biased against somebody, they are not conscious of it. So yes, you're correct in that regard. How do you combat that? It's through education. And when I say education, I don't just mean what you learn at an academy or at a higher level institution. I just mean like regular, common, everyday education you get from interacting with people, human decency, understanding that people's differences don't make them worse or better. And understanding that a lot of times diversity is what makes us great. Every great existence, every great culture has taken something from other cultures and developed their society for what it is, period. Whether it's colonizers coming to a place and settling in a place, they got something from indigenous people that they thought was good and great, and they adopted. That's just a fact. And some people just don't acknowledge that. And so we just have to keep having those conversations to make sure that we don't allow people to our cultures, our languages, our history, our contributions to every culture.
Darius, what's the most important thing or point or message that I could get across to students in a school assembly when talking about racism? This is from a student who's listening, and what's the main point that they could make in the school assembly when talking about racism and maybe unconscious bias?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just reiterating that we're all one race. That's the human race. We all have essentially the same genetic makeup, and we're all one people. We all want the same things. I think that's another big deal, is that people always think that our value systems are so different. They're not. People want to be safe. People want to have healthy food. People want to have good housing. People want children to be educated. People want health care. People want to have real opportunities that are the same as opportunities that everyone else is given. So I think when you're talking to young people in this space, I think you have to just reiterate to them that we're all the same. Yes, I may physically look different from you, but you and I actually want the same things. I want your kids to be safe, and I hope you want my kids to be safe. You want your kids educated, I want my kids educated. And there's enough education to go around, and if we invest in education, invest in economics, then we'll create enough jobs for everybody. So you're gonna always have competition, but I think that's the biggest thing, is you can't say it enough that we are all one race of people. That's it. We're the human race, and we will thrive or perish together, period. You hear me quote Dr. King a lot, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a great American who believed in nonviolent protest. He believed in protecting the rights of everybody. He's a great American. He's from Atlanta. But one thing, I'm gonna leave you with one last quote that he always said, is that everybody can be great. Everyone can be great because everyone can serve. So I want the young people on this call to take that with you, that everyone can be great. All of you can be great. You're great now because you're serving. And don't ever feel like the service that you are giving is not enough, or it's too small, or it's insignificant, or nobody's paying attention, because that's just not true. You may not hear it at that moment, you may not hear it all the time, but what you're doing matters. So don't ever forget that. And service is what makes people great. Being a part of something that's bigger than you. And if everybody thinks about that, and if everybody lives that, then we're all better off. If we all do our little part, the part that makes the most sense to you, the part where you can help, just think about how much better off we would all be across the world. Because quite frankly, everybody can do a little bit more service, period. Whether it's your community, your family, your school, wherever. So just keep that in mind. You can be great because everyone can serve. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to participate.
Darius, again, huge thank you. And we'll be sharing more kind of information, so keep out on your email for what's going on around you and stuff like that. So again, huge thank you, and hope everyone has a great day and takes this conversation really and internalizes it and takes it with you, because that's really the next step. Alrighty, see everybody.
See y'all later.